Some stories feel like they're straight out of a movie. A revolution that started in a garage and somehow ended up in billions of our pockets. It's this incredible tale of vision, of exile, and honestly, one of the greatest comebacks in history. This is Apple's story. Revolutions almost never start with a big, loud bang. Nope, they usually start with a quiet but really powerful idea. And for Apple, that idea wasn't born in some fancy corporate boardroom. It all started in the humble, kind of cramped confines of a suburban garage. So let's go back. Our story kicks off right here. Before Silicon Valley was this global empire we know today, it was basically a playground for dreamers and hobbyists. Just tinkerers, hunched over circuit boards, trying to find the future. And right at the heart of it all was this legendary partnership. On one side, you had Steve Jobs, the intense, obsessive visionary who was absolutely hell-bent on perfection. And on the other, Steve Wozniak, this shy, brilliant genius who could literally conjure magic from lines of code. It was the perfect fusion of vision and engineering. Together, they were just unstoppable. But here's a wild piece of trivia. There was actually a third co-founder, Ronald Wayne. Just days after Apple was officially formed, he got cold feet and sold his 10% stake for just $800. Can you imagine? Today, that stake would be worth billions upon billions. It's got to be one of the biggest what-if moments in all of business history. So, the first computer, the Apple I, that was really for the hobbyists. But the Apple II? Oh, that was for everyone. With its color graphics and really friendly design, it dragged the computer out of the workshop and dropped it right into our living rooms and classrooms. This is what turned Apple from a garage dream into a real household name. But you know how it goes, rapid success brings a whole new set of problems. As the company grew, so did the clashing egos and the power struggles. And that same uncompromising vision that built the company, well, now some people on the inside were starting to see it as a liability. This rebellious spirit was just perfectly captured by that iconic 1984 Super Bowl ad for the Macintosh. Wow. Apple wasn't just selling a computer here, it was selling an entire ideology. This promise to shatter the gray corporate conformity of a giant like IBM. It immediately became a cultural touchstone. But behind the scenes, that rebellious vision was clashing hard with the board. In 1985, Steve Jobs was forced out of the very company he built. And that kicked off what we now call Apple's dark years. Without its guiding compass, the product line just ballooned into this confusing mess of models with no clear purpose. Bold experiments like the Newton failed hard, and pretty soon, all innovation just ground to a halt. So, just how bad did it really get? Well, by 1997, reports were saying that Apple was just 90 days away from total bankruptcy. 90 days! Most analysts had already written its obituary. It was over. Stick a fork in it, done. But then, in a last-ditch, desperate move, Apple bought Next, the company Jobs had started after he left. And with that single purchase, the prodigal founder came home. The comeback was on. And listen, this wasn't just some personnel change. It was like a soul transplant for the entire company. The legendary Think Different campaign was this global announcement that the true spirit of Apple was back, celebrating the very rebels and misfits it had once cast aside. Jobs' return was swift and honestly pretty ruthless. He immediately cut 70% of the company's products. Just gone. He stripped away all the clutter to get everyone refocused on just a few core projects. He wasn't just trying to save a company, he was restoring its very essence. A deep, profound focus on simplicity and brilliance. And with that focus restored, Apple was about to embark on one of the greatest second acts in corporate history. Seriously, they were about to launch a series of products that didn't just dominate markets, they created them out of thin air. First up was the iPod. The pitch was so simple, yet totally revolutionary. 1,000 songs in your pocket. That's it. It completely upended the music industry, and with those iconic white earbuds, it made Apple a true symbol of modern culture. Then, in 2007, Jobs walked on stage and said, "Today, Apple reinvents the phone." And the reaction? Total disbelief. People were like, a phone with no keyboard? Critics openly laughed at the idea, but that one device would go on to reshape, well, everything. communication, entertainment, and pretty much every industry on Earth. And then, with the iPad in the App Store, Apple wasn't just selling pieces of hardware anymore. They were building a seamless, powerful ecosystem. You see, while all their competitors were chasing specs, more megahertz, more gigabytes, Apple was selling an experience, an integrated world that just worked. But as Apple was reaching these incredible new heights, its iconic leader was quietly facing a private battle with his health, and this would set the stage for the company's next great and most difficult transition. In August of 2011, Steve Jobs officially resigned as CEO, passing the torch to his trusted lieutenant, Tim Cook. Just a few months later, he passed away, and the entire world seemed to stop and mourn the loss of a true visionary who had so profoundly changed the way we all live. The question on absolutely everyone's mind was, could Apple even survive without its founder? The Jobs era, it was driven by this rebellious, product-led intuition. The Tim Cook era, in contrast, became defined by operational excellence, steady, sustainable growth, and making that amazing ecosystem even stronger. And under Tim Cook, Apple did become the most valuable company in the world, but its true legacy, well, it isn't really financial. Apple proved that design and simplicity matter. It showed the world that technology could actually feel personal and human and intuitive. And ultimately, it sold a belief in the power of passion and vision to change the world. Which, of course, leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future. As Apple has grown from that little garage startup into a global superpower, it has to balance its rebellious soul with the immense responsibilities of an empire. So the question is, can a company that was built by a rebel ever truly stop rebelling?